To the Snapped podcast. My name is Tyler Kluver, and I'm a former Division I athlete turned entrepreneur. I run my own fitness and nutrition coaching business, as well as a sports media brand that produces podcasts, sells merchandise, and creates exclusive paid content. The fun part is I don't really know what I'm doing as a business owner. I'm just figuring it out day by day. This show, Snapped, acts as an audio journal for my thoughts and ideas on fitness, health, business, mindset, and whatever else I find important on the pursuit to personal happiness and a balanced life. I hope you can take something from the show that makes your life a little bit better. And regardless, I'm just happy you're here. Let's have a day. Let's go. Welcome into the Snap podcast. Today, a story, I guess. We're going outside of the realm of fitness today. My life doesn't get much more exciting than my daily workouts, what I'm going to eat. I really do live a boring life, which makes for, well, a bit of a boring podcast. We get pretty in the weeds on the fitness, nutrition, health stuff, and hopefully the story / lesson learned from today's episode sort of speaks to my life becoming more exciting due to my own actions. But today we have a story, a situation that I found myself in just last night that I feel like I could tell on the show. And I don't get many of those. So we're going to tell that today. I want to appreciate everybody again for showing up each week, listening. Quick quick note. If you're listening on Spotify and you're like, you listen to most of your podcasts on Apple, you can go back to Apple because they changed the rules. I begged you guys for 150 people to listen on Spotify. They changed it to 1,000 people. We are very far off from that. We're far off from even having 1,000 total listeners on each episode. So, you can just go back to Apple if you want. All right, into our topic of the day. 2 minutes and 30 seconds in. That's probably a record for me. I really do want to try to make this a quick one because this is going to be a storytelling mode feel to it. And we all know that I fucking suck at that. So here we go. Tyler Kluver graduates from Iowa in 2017. The NFL doesn't work out. The year turns over into 2018. Then the NFL doesn't work out. I come back home to what is now home, Walkon, with my wife, fiance at the time, and start looking for a job. While we're looking for work, trying to figure out our career, we start this podcast. It's called the Washed Up Walk-Ons, right? Most of you know that. The Washed Up Walk-Ons is a passion project. It's just for fun. Don't even know what podcasting is. Have no background in media at the time. I just search how to start a podcast. We buy a couple microphones. We use a couple software things, and we start putting out really shitty episodes of the podcast. But we had one thing going for us. And that one thing is that we happen to have this really novel, unique experience of playing for the University of Iowa football team. Not something that a lot of people get to do. Not only that, but within that story itself, you collect all of the people who actually did get to play for the University of Iowa, then the story becomes even more unique because the podcast that we start is of 3 guys, none of which were actually recruited really or given scholarships to come play for that university, but found it a way to go 5 years in the program, eventually earn scholarships, and really get the full breadth of the experience of being a grinded out, walk-on student athlete success story. So the podcast catches fire, right? A shitload of people start listening to it immediately. By week 3, we're getting 5,000 downloads. Basically, the type of numbers that we're doing today, we peaked at immediately 3 weeks into the show. because of this, it becomes what it is today, right? It's now a total business venture and excuse me, a total business venture and income thing for me. It's what I do, part of what I do. Also because of this, I meet some people. I get connected or reached out to or put in touch with a ton of people along the way that I otherwise would not have. People who have influence, power, uh, social credibility within circles that, again, I would never touch if I didn't have this show that I created, right? And so today's story focuses around these two people and the greater life lesson of putting yourselves in situations that you may or may not be comfortable with. More than likely, you aren't, but they're situations that make you grow as a person. And for me, that is networking, right? Like going to sort of professional events, receptions, dinners, meetings, stuff like that. I don't get to do a lot of that because I work for myself and I'm not in a infrastructure of a company or within a hierarchy of tons of employees or yada yada. Like the only place I would really get that is through opportunities like I'm about to describe, where I am around other people within the University of Iowa ecosystem. So again, we do the podcast, it gets super popular, yada yada. One of these two people that are important to this story, one of them that I meet is a guy named Dan. Okay, Dan is a massive Hawk fan, contributor, donor, whatever you want to call it, just all around Hawkeye legend. Lives and breathes it. Goes to every game, right? Has a tailgate right near the stadium. Knows a lot of people. Contributes and participates in the I Club, local I Club in his area. Volunteers for a bunch of things. Is involved. Knows a lot of people. He reaches out to me in conjunction with somebody else to come to the town that he lives in to do some football camps in those first couple years out of the program, so that I could help with some long snapping and some special teams work. I help them out. I talk to the team, and I create this relationship with Dan, who now since is all about asking me to do things, giving me opportunities. Hey, do you want to come with me to this? Hey, do you want to come to this iClub meeting? Hey, I've got this opportunity, yada, yada. He's always trying to help me out. Like just an absolute legend all around dude who wants to provide opportunities to people that he sees, and evidently I'm one of them, sees potential in or that deserve these opportunities. And we probably stay in touch once a month. Talk about Hawkeye stuff, but other stuff as well. Okay, so guy number one is Dan. Guy number two is a guy named Matt. Matt happens to be someone who works in the athletic department. Again, we start this podcast. The podcast grows. People want merchandise for the podcast. The merchandise grows so big, and we have obviously designs and ideas to put on t-shirts and flags and all this stuff that coincides with the university, that we now run into the, I wouldn't say problem, although it did certainly become a problem in some aspects. We run into the issue of making sure we're compliant with licensing, meaning Iowa has licensed out the Tiger Hawk, the use of Iowa, the use of their font. Um, the back end joke of this is they own goddamn near everything. You say the word Hawks, and they come and they collect a royalty fee on it. So you have to kind of get around that to make sure that the university is okay with you selling stuff or printing stuff that has something relative to their brand on it, right? Uh, we ride that line a little bit as the washed up walk-ons. We print some stuff, we do some stuff, and all of a sudden I find myself in a situation where I'm getting a cease and desist letter from the university lawyers, and I'm in contact with several different people, head of licensing, the law firm, um, and eventually Matt, who steps in and sort of, to be quite honest, I'm not even sure what his exact title is or why he was the one who stepped in, but I think he had this weird sort of intersect of knowing who we were, listening to the podcast, also working with the licensing people, working within the athletic department. He was just kind of this middle ground guy. He steps in, and I eventually end up on the phone with Matt, going back and forth over email with Matt, having a conversation, getting to know each other, him helping us out, being a great dude to help us through that situation, smooth some things over on both sides, and uh, kind of resolving that whole ordeal for us was a very big deal because getting through that then eventually made us a lot of money, smoothed our relationship over with the university, and we've continued that relationship ever since. So Matt, great guy, did a lot for us, didn't have to. So we've got Dan, we've got Matt. 2 weeks ago, I get a text from Dan, old Dan, up to his ways again, right? Hey, I've got an invite to an intimate reception for interim athletic director Beth Getz at the University of Iowa, right? Beth, we'll call her number three in this scenario, person number three. And while she is in some ways the most important to this story, not so much, um, she is doing what athletic directors do, right? They travel around the state, fuck around the country, showing face, meeting people, shaking hands, answering questions. It's an interesting job. It would be quite the job. It kind of reminds me of a politician, to be honest. At least from the outside, it looks very similar. Um, so I'm like, okay. And Dan's like, I got a guest if I want it, right? And he gets me on the list. Again, Dan has connections. He knows people. He volunteers. He's got connections. He gets me on the list to go to this event, and I know that this event is not a place that Tyler Kluber finds himself very often, right? In fact, the whole back and forth of this story is because events like this are usually ones where I go, even if I get the opportunity, I'm good. Thanks for the invite. And the moral of this whole story is don't do that, right? If you get cool opportunities, if people offer you an invite to something or access to something, or hey, I can um, make a connection with you and someone else who is in your field of career, potentially someone that you wouldn't meet otherwise, someone who may be able to help you down the road, get you into some bigger, better things in your life down the road. You need to take those opportunities. And to up into this extent in my life, and it's really unfortunate. I'm almost 29 years old. I could have been doing this for the last 6 years since I graduated from the university, but I haven't. I haven't been taking those opportunities. Not that I've had a lot, but maybe once or twice a year I get an opportunity to do something like this from a guy like Dan who knows me, and the podcast has opened up some doors for us, some windows. So I go back and forth with Lauren, the wife, and I'm like, should I go to this? Do I want to go? And she's always like, you need to go. This is something you should go to. And I don't know why, but I finally decided, and maybe it's just because I had a feeling, but I finally decided, all right, I'll go to this one. And on the sheet it says an intimate reception. I get the feeling it's at a very nice place in Des Moines. And I start to get the feeling that I don't think there's very many people invited to this thing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 50. I don't think this isn't some big like 100, 200 people dinner where she's just giving a talk. Like, no, this is like just a straight up like a cocktail hour with a couple other people who are all way more important, have done way more with their life, have way more money and influence and credibility than I do. And the new athletic director, Beth Getz, who is a super hot topic right now because no one loved the previous director, Gary Barta. Beth has been at the university for just over a year, I believe. And now a year into her tenure, she takes over as interim and is pretty much slotted to be the one who's hired full time to be the athletic director at Iowa. athletic director of a Big 10 university, kind of a big fucking deal, right? Big fucking deal. Someone that you would be good to know, right? If you know somebody like that. So again, Dan invites me. I'm like, sure, let's do it. I dress up for the first time since a wedding earlier this summer, put on my nice clothes, button up shirt. I show up. And again, the whole time feeling super out of my element. This is not a place where you find me. This is out of my comfort zone. I now have to schmooze for 90 minutes with a bunch of people I don't know. And I don't like talking. I definitely don't like giving an effort to conversations where I don't, have anything in common with the people. So this is just completely not Tyler, but I go do it. And guess who's there? Person number 2 in the story, Matt. Matt happens to be in a role where I guess uh, at these kinds of events, he accompanies the new AD, interim AD, Beth gets, and another 1 or 2 employees are there as well. And they kind of help her prepare for these things. I mean, they're doing research on who this is such a. Oh, by the way, there was 19 people there. I was one of 19 people, and then the 3 university employees. Right. So, okay, I'm meeting all these people, making connections, talking about the podcast, kind of pumping the brand as you would, trying to really play us up as legitimate. And and I meet Matt in person, which is great. Now I've made a secondary connection. Matt helped us out. We both kind of knew, oh, that's who was on the phone when we went through that situation 2 years ago. And we got to talk about that. We got to kind of connect on that, expand the conversation. And all of a sudden that turns into, again, he works in the athletic department. And who knows if this ever goes anywhere. But that turns into some conversation. I won't go into the details of it that could potentially lead to us doing some big stuff that is partnered with the goddamn university at some point. Some really cool stuff that would not only just elevate our brand by tenfold, but would be actually like in the micro, it would be some of the coolest stuff that we would ever get to do. And because I make a great connection with him and a couple other people, and Dan is there to kind of introduce me to everybody, I end up also standing at a little cocktail table with Beth Getz, the AD, for 20 minutes. 20 minutes with just me, Dan, Matt, and Beth. The goddamn AD. And we talk about Coach Ferentz, the football program, the podcast. I tell her, hey, like I'm making jokes, but like kind of like also serious, like, yeah, we're gonna get you on the podcast, like the way that we do it. And she agrees to come on. She's like, yeah, I'd love to do it. Sounds like you guys have fun. It'd be a good time. I walk away from this meeting having made several connections. I'm about to reach out to him today and say thanks for letting me come. With potential brainstormed ideas, far out opportunities, potentially with the university someday, and the connection with the probable AD of the university to then come on our show later as a guest. All because I just decided to say yes. So I guess what I'm saying is don't be like me and take the easy way out and just sit on the couch if you got an opportunity to go to a dinner or a meeting or some kind of event. Just spend the 90 minutes. I didn't even have to pay anything to go. I just had to say yes. And I walked away with unbelievable the fact that, I mean, you get to have that sort of conversation and personal introduction to someone that high up in the university. But then the conversation goes to a place where, yeah, maybe we'll get you on the show sometime. will keep this connection going. And that doesn't even count the other impressions that I was able to make on some other people that mattered. Take a chance, put yourself in situations that make you maybe a little bit uncomfortable, and go see what you got. I do it all the time with fitness. I make myself uncomfortable with fitness every single day. But, and I'm realizing this now, I'm being a little hypocritical if I don't do that socially because fitness is my game. That's what I like to do. I can take myself to a spot where I feel real uncomfortable. We've talked about it. But I'm kind of being a bitch and a one trick pony if I don't do that in other areas of my life. If I don't make myself uncomfortable and see what I've got when it comes to game time and I got to stand there and schmooze people who I don't know in an adult setting that I'm not comfortable in. And by not doing that, I've been immediately closing the door on potential, maybe they don't arise, but potential opportunities. So say yes more and don't turn down don't turn down some access or some opportunities that people give you. Hopefully it's a good story on this Wednesday. We'll talk next time. Peace.